Let's get some of the lads together. Let's have a good old Imps. Okay, you're on. Go on, fellas. Get around a go. Let's have a good go. Come on, then. You ready? Come on, you lot. Go on, then.
Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay. Lincoln City are the team, the Reds is their name. Sinselbank is their home ground and football is their game. So come and cheer them on, you lads, support them all the way. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our delight.
Morning all, how we doing? So, I haven't had time to write, unfortunately. I'm going to have my hood up because my hair, oh, it's not too bad. We'll leave it at that. For those who are listening on podcast, which I'm going to put this on, my hair's a mess. So yeah. So I did a live video yesterday morning, didn't I? Full of the joys of spring. About the fact that I thought that we had a great chance of going in and progressing in the EFL trophy. I thought we were going to see some of the players who, I've been really, really keen to see in the Lincoln City shirt. Jay Ben, Jacob Davenport, was really excited about seeing those. I need to kind of see the dynamic, Max Sanders coming in, that sort of thing. I was really excited. And so I went, and I haven't been to an EFL trophy game since we lost to Manchester United under 21s in Michael Appleton's first game in charge at Sinselbank. And the only reason I went to that was because it was his first game. I don't think I've been to one featuring a full team since we played Mansfield Town under Danny Cowley. I think Michael O'Connor was sent off in that game. So I don't boycott. I'm not a boycotter. I'm just not really interested half the time unless we got closer to Wembley. I know there's 10 grand at stake. I've watched some of them on telly when we got to on the iFollow when we got to the semi-final under Michael. I watched every game, but there was an obvious reason for that. We were stuck in our houses and nothing better to do. So it's not a competition that always grabs me. I'm not against it. I'm not a boycotter. I think the money's good. I don't like having to play under 21 teams. I wouldn't consider paying £10 to watch an under 21 team. I actually got in for free the Michael Appleton night as press. So, I've not contributed to that, but I have principles and that's not one of them. And I respect anybody that does. And I went along last night because we've won a couple of games on the spin. I thought we'd put a relatively strong team out. I wanted to see one or two of the players. As I've said, I just felt that it was a game that I wanted to go to. And with Saturday being cancelled as well, I think had we not played Saturday, maybe I wouldn't have bothered. Had we played Saturday against MK Dons rather than being cancelled, I don't think I would have gone last night. So obviously it's I think it's about a 70-mile round trip by the time I've done the whole lot. So it's just a bit of a pain for a non-entity game. But I went along. Now, the first disappointment, obviously, was I was predominantly going for Jay Ben and Jacob Davenport because I haven't seen either of them in a Lincoln shirt. Jacob Davenport was making his debut. Jay Ben's played for us, but not at Sinselbank. And so I thought that I'd go and have a look. Jay Ben didn't play; he was injured, of course. Why wouldn't he be? I mean, everyone else is at some point, aren't they? It's more disappointing these days when you see the team sheet and you understand this player's injured and that player's injured, and it's hard to take. And I was chatting to my mate Chris on the way home. He came along with me and sort of saying, what is it in this post kind of COVID world where we suffer massively from injuries? And to be fair, other teams have as well. Bristol Rovers really struggling with injuries. I don't understand it. We never had this sort of kind of record with injuries prior to the COVID break. We didn't have it in Michael Appleton's final kind of his first season, but the half season we didn't have these problems. Just don't really get it. So yeah, a bit disappointed with that. Jacob Davenport did start. It was a strong side. Pity FanHub don't do the prediction because I got 11 out of 11, which is I think the second time this season. And after when the game kicked off, it felt like a friendly. It really does. And it felt like a friendly around the ground. Me and Chris kind of walked through the fan zone, and it was, there was a few people dotted about. It wasn't busy. It was busier around there than league games used to be before we had the fan zone. So fair play to that. And the club have to try and maximise what they can. They have to put these games on. I'm sure if you actually spoke to Liam or Clive or members of the board, off the record and said, what do you think of the EFL trophy aside from the money, they would rather not play it as well. I mean, some of the players wouldn't agree with that. I remember talking to Harry Toffolo about it, and many years ago. Well, not that many, obviously. But he said, oh, I like it because it's a chance to play football. And I said, oh, you know, do we look forward to a rest? No, I want to play every single game. So they like it. They like competitive football, like pitting their wits against different teams. Charles Vernon will like it. He wasn't going to be close to a starting position, was he, in the league? He's always going to kind of be the third man, I think, on the bench. I'm not sure I saw a massive amount yesterday, really, from him or a number of the players to change Michael, God, there we go, Mark's mind on anything. But you know, he'll be happy to get a game. One or two of the other bodies will as well. So yeah, it's a friendly atmosphere, and I'm not a big fan of friendlies. I never go to them. I don't like cup games that feel like friendlies. Yeah, if it was the semi-final and we were playing Doncaster, I'm damn sure that it would be completely different. You know, it would be a packed Sinsel or a busy Sinsel. People who would boycott would still boycott, but people like me, the floating fan, would certainly be there. If you're a man of principle, you want to call me a hypocrite, fair enough. I don't care. I don't think I am. I just support Lincoln City, but I don't support under 21 teams. So anyway, I thought that the first half, the whole thing felt like a friendly. Yeah, and I'm seeing comments coming through about disjointed performances, poor performances, etc., etc. But I disagree in the first half. You know what? I really do. We didn't have the killer edge, and I'm not going to talk about the front three until later on. But I thought from the back through the midfield into the midfield to attacking midfield players, I actually thought we just retained complete and utter control in the first half. I don't think that we looked suspect at the back at all. I don't think we conceded a chance on goal until possibly what the kind of the dying periods of the first half. Didn't create a lot. I'll come to that in a minute. But we had lots of possession. We were playing nice little patterns of football. And for me, and this goes into what Craig Harvey has said about Davenport, which I'll come to. And I did see a message this morning, Craig, just been busy, pal. For me, it was because of Jacob Davenport. He put one pass astray in the first half that I remember. And I was watching closely because he's one of these players that we've signed that I'm looking at and thinking he could be massive for us. And I really, really believe it. I do. I think if we'd signed him on a 2 or 3 year contract at the beginning of the summer, I would have been raving about him as the marquee signing. You know, we're talking a player here that was at Manchester City as a youngster. So you're talking like Luis Fiorini 3 years down the line. If Fiorini leaves Manchester City, goes to a championship club, and as I understand it, I think Davenport cost Blackburn about £500,000. I might be wrong. He's gone there. He's had injury problems, to be fair, which have blighted it. But Blackburn fans like him. They say, you know, if he'd stayed fit and etc., etc., he would have been a big player for us. Hence the 4-month contract, I think, is for us to look at his fitness. My God, I wish he could play fit. I wish he was fit, because the way that he conducted himself in front of the midfield, for me, and I know it's the first game, it's an EFL trophy game, I'm not getting overexcited and all that sort of thing, but I just thought he looked like a holding midfielder. Now, I like Lasse Sorensen, but Lasse Sorensen looks like a Conor McGrandles. He looks like a player who will go box to box, who's not entirely comfortable in the holding role. And Mark Kennedy thankfully refers to it as a 6, which I do. Everyone else, I think, calls it a 4. But whoever plays, whatever the playing in front of the back four, Davenport looked like he could do it. His positioning was excellent. There's moments like Lasse, when he has to go and make a tackle, he has to run to make that tackle, and that's his game. That's his game. He's all about high energy. Jacob Davenport, when he was needed, he was just there. He reads the game so well, from what I could see last night. And you know, the proof's in the pudding further down the line. I get that. You know, it was Doncaster, but just the early signs for me were that he brought the attacking midfielders in and the defence and kind of gelled them together. I actually thought Max Sanders looked really good, considering he's been out for a few weeks. I thought he was energetic, plenty of runs, plenty of pressing. He was the kind of almost in the 4-4-2 press, so he was playing with the role that Ted Bishop was playing against Derby County. I thought Tashan looked really good. I thought he made some nice moves. There was one passing, there was one interchange of passing. It was on the edge of the area. I can't remember the particular moment, but it was Davenport and Tashan, and they exchanged a couple of passes, and I just thought, you know, you can just see the poise and the technique with which they have. Sadly, everything broke down in the final third, and that's because and in this point, I agree with Matthew Walker, who said a very disjointed poor performance. It was at this point that things broke down for me, was that final third, and it just didn't work. I thought that Tom had a really tough game. And again, Chris, who I was with, kind of said, well, he's not really had any service. He's not had this or that to do. I do kind of get that. But at the same time, it felt to me like a player who was coming back from an injury, and he's only had a game or so out, but it felt like that. Thought Jordan Garrick, since he's been injured, looks to have found it tough. I thought he had a really good debut against Forest Green. He was lively. You could see what he wanted to do last night, but he didn't get a lot of joy. With Charles Vernham, I thought flashes, moments where you could see, the talent. He's got a bit of pace. He was willing to take players on, but there was also a lack of understanding with some of the players around him, which could come with the fact that he hasn't played with some of them. So there was misplaced passes between him and Jamie Robson. I seem to think there was misplaced pass between him and, I'm happy to be corrected, I think it was Tashan, but it might have been Max Sanders. It was just looked a little bit like they weren't on the same wavelength. So for me, last night we had a very in the first half, this is a very complete, dare I say, performance across the back four and the midfield three. I thought that we rarely looked troubled. I thought we looked good in possession, and then it broke down. And actually, it reminded me an awful lot of most of last season. Certainly this stage last season, when Liam Bridcup played, when we looked really good going into the final third, and then the final third it broke down. Remember though, Ben House and Jack Diamond, who between them have scored 7 goals in 2 games. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's 7 in 2 games. Didn't play. Whilst Tom's captain, and whilst Jordan Garrick is considered a first team player, it did feel very much actually like a second string attack. And that was the first half. I think we hit the post in the first half? I think we hit the post. I think Charles Vernham had a shot saved, but it was by no means scintillating going forward. At no point did I think that we would either A, concede, or B, not win the game in the first half, even though it was below par. My old man messaged me. He wasn't there last night. He sent me a message and said, this is good. Nobody's going to score here. It's got 0-0 written all over it. And I said, we'll win. We'll win this game. We weren't good, but we weren't bad. And it's one of those instances, I think, where the final result clouds people's opinions of how the game actually went. I think, had it been 0-0 at the end of the game, we'd gone through on penalties, we would have said, well, we kept it relatively tight, we did this or that. So, I didn't feel we were in any problem. Thought we came out in the second half. I thought we looked decent again up until the goal. I mean, the goal was a decent cross. Keeper should have saved that. I mean, the header was straight at him, but it was a good header from a winger, to be fair, straight at him, but it had the power at least to then beat the goalkeeper. It wasn't straight into his hands. We got that goal, and I just thought, that's it now. We're going to go on. We're going to score 2 or 3. Fine, no problem. Through good night's work, and as I keep saying, in the Ivy Club by 10 o'clock for a pint and a celebratory chat. Fantastic stuff. And that was really it, wasn't it? And it was much like the Forest Green game in that respect, that we scored the goal, and then, for want of a better phrase, it just all went to shit. And I don't entirely know why. Jacob Davenport came off not long after that, but I think that we'd already started to kind of lose our concentration a bit. But Davenport came off. Lass, I think, came on, and I just felt. 1 minute. Should we go back, boy? We'll go back. Good lad. I just felt that it was almost as if we'd scored the goal, so we thought the game was won. Mark Kennedy afterwards talked a lot about attitude and character, and I think the last 30 minutes of the game we showed very, very little of that. And I don't know who you could point at, because, as I've said, I thought Tashan had a great first half, average second. Max, great first half, average second, but he has recently missed games. But Jordan Garrick wasn't the strongest in both halves. Jamie Robson put himself about, strong player, but again, faded a little in the second. I think there was a moment in the second half as well where he'd gone through and he had an effort at goal, and I thought, a cross could have brought a goal. There was a little bit of that, but you kind of want your players to shoot as well, don't you? So it's easy to criticise them when they shoot and miss. It's easy to criticise them when they don't shoot. So I'm not going to lay into Jamie Robson too much, and I don't think he was the worst Lincoln City player on the field last night. But yeah, it just went apart, and Doncaster got the wind in their sails. Not sure why their fans were singing "Up the Football League we go" when they've lost 3 league games and they're playing in the League Cup or the EFL Trophy. Not sure they realised quite what competition they were in. But that was really the only atmosphere it was going to be. their team kind of got the wind in their sails. I thought their goal was avoidable. If I have a complaint, we were down to 10 men waiting to make a substitution. The ball went out of play. The referee didn't allow that substitution to be made. I'll come on to him in a minute. And so we then conceded a free kick with 10 on the field, when had we had 11 on the field, as we should have done, and bear in mind one of them would have been the holding midfielder who would have been in the position to make the challenge fairly rather than the free kick, then the passage of play that led to the goal wouldn't have happened. I'm not blaming the referee for the goal, but he was very, very bizarre referee. I mean, he blew for more fouls than I've seen in a game for a long while, I think, and I'd be interested to see the stats. I didn't see one nasty tackle, I don't think, at all. I thought it was a game played at a friendly pace, refereed by somebody who thought that it was going to be played at blood and thunder. And when there were free kicks to give, he didn't give them. I thought I would not. If I saw, I think it was Adam Herzog, if I saw his name on a Football League game, including Lincoln City, I know that game's going to be ruined by a very picky referee. I said before the game he had the fourth highest number of fouls. There's something like the 40th fouls to yellow cards ratio. So he likes his whistle, he doesn't like his cards. And I thought actually at points he ruined what could have been a decent game. And we're a team, by the way, all about tempo. We're a team all about fast moves. We're a team about keeping the pressure on. And more often than not, that was stopped by his whistle for challenges that were not free kicks. And what I might do if I get time later is have a look on Y-Scout and pull some of those up onto a video just to show how much he ruined the game. Didn't cost us the game, not at all, but certainly ruined it as a spectacle. So they scored from that, from an effort that was driven, through a crowd of players into the back of the net. You want to see somebody getting a block on it. It didn't happen. But it wasn't a goal where you could particularly say we'd committed a major error. It was a silly free kick. We didn't clear our lines when we had the opportunity. But at 1-1, still thought, we can go on and win this. I thought we could. And then we didn't. We just didn't. There was no urgency. There was no pressure. At 1-1, I think we made a substitution. And immediately after that substitution, I think they scored. I might be wrong. It might have been at 1-0. But I just think we brought Makama on. And I don't think we would have brought him on had we been chasing the game. He's grown now, isn't he? What a tall lad he is, Jesus. But yeah, there was just nothing in it in the end. And I think, okay, they got their late goal. They deserved it. They deserved it in the second half because they had the better chances in the second half. They played the better football. We just fell apart completely. Was it when Davenport went off? It would be around that time. But I would also say that he hasn't played any of the Football League games. And you look at Derby, and we were excellent defensively, and we kept our shape. So, I'm not looking to blame players, but I think on the night when he went off, there was certainly a change. I think one or two players, whether it was fitness, I don't know, thought that the game was won after we scored the goal. One or two really struggled to get into it. And then when we made the change, we brought Jack Diamond on. He did change the game a little bit in our favour, but it was too little too late. He looked lively. Had he had 55 minutes, or had we kind of gone for the kill at 1-0, I think maybe we could have taken the game. But we didn't. That's that. Joe, what, I'd rather lose 2-1 at home to Doncaster in the AFL Trophy and have 6 points in the bag from 2 big league games like we have than anything else. Barnsley beat Newcastle Kids. So I think the league is Newcastle Kids on 1 point. Barnsley and us on 3 points each. I think we're above them based on either goals scored or record between the two. And then Doncaster top on 5 points. So Doncaster only need a draw against Barnsley to go through. If they were to draw against Barnsley, then actually we only need a draw against Newcastle Kids to go through. But you want to be beating Newcastle Kids, especially when we don't really have a second string. We don't really have a team where you put players out who are not troubling the first team. Almost every player, bar perhaps Makama. Charlie, come on. Perhaps Makama. Are knocking on the door of the first team. And that kind of makes last night's result a little disappointing because you look at that midfield For me, man of the match was Davenport. But if you look at that midfield, he's the only one I think that hasn't played a senior game in the Football League for Lincoln. So Matty Virtue, Max Sanders, Tashan Oakley-Booth, Les Sorensen, all fighting for one of three positions in the starting 11. Ted Bishop, you would imagine when fit, plays one of those attacking midfield roles. Davenport probably, and Sorensen fighting for the holding role. So you've got Virtue, Tashan and Sanders fighting for one role. I thought Tashan and Sanders both had very good games in the first half. I thought Matty Virtue showed some good application in the second. He had a shot just over. But, I don't know. I just think after half time, Sanders and Tashan probably would like to have seen a little bit more. Mark Kennedy would like to have seen a little bit more. Danny Mandrieu was mentioned in the post-match interview. He's going to be back in full training on Monday. So you would imagine could make the bench for the Bolton game. We're going to be looking to get some minutes into him. If he proves to be the player that we hope he is, Jordan Garrick could find it hard to get a regular start because he has dropped off a little bit. We've seen what he can do against Forest Green, perhaps been overshadowed a bit by Jack Diamond. Not quite sure kind of why he's dropped off so quickly. I saw somebody on Twitter label him as lazy. I hate that. I hate players being labelled as lazy after a single game, particularly when they tend to fit a certain demographic of player, let's say. That's all I'm going to say. I despise it. Absolutely despise it. Is Jordan Garrick lazy? No, he put lots of gut busting runs in. He chased almost everything that he could. He didn't make the right decisions at times. I get that. He wasn't the only one who made poor decisions last night, certainly in the second period. To label him lazy is frankly lazy. It really is. I think he'll still be a decent player for us. Didn't have a good game last night. Tom's getting some hate. It's easy though, innit? You have a number 9 who scores 3 in 2 games. You bring another number 9 in that some fans are split on anyway. He doesn't score. It's easy to have a pop. I don't think he is quite as much of a fox in the box striker as Ben House is. I don't think Tom is ever a player who's going to score you 15 goals a season. And people will say, well, that's what you need from your centre forward. I can't argue that you don't need goals from your centre forward. Of course you do. I can't argue that Tom had a good game last night. Like many, he struggled. He was one that probably struggled for most of the game rather than just the second period. But again, it's easy to constantly look for scapegoats, I think. So I think that's more or less that, really. I mean, it just wasn't a great night, was it, at all? The early kickoff I like. I know a lot of you don't. But God, if league games could kick off at 7, it'd be so much better for me. Get back in a good time, a bit of time to do some stuff. Let's have a look through some of your comments. I won't bring them all up on the screen, but Andy Gray, hello. Sean Simons, hello. Jason Addison, the same. Hello. Andy Gray, I like that point, actually. I will bring that one up. The performance validates my current viewers as I can't decide if we're poor or showing potential. I think we're both. And I think that's why we have wildly contrasting feedback from people on social media, and there is a middle ground, and the middle ground's growing, and I like to see that, because last season, you were either left or right, you're either pro or anti-Appleton, and if you're in the middle ground, you pissed up both sets off. I think there's a huge middle ground now. Steve Bowden, who I've got a lot of time for on Twitter, kind of said, the jury's out on Davenport as well, and he's right. It's easy to have one game and say this player's good, this player's bad. Nobody would have said Jack Diamond was a great signing after the Cambridge game, would they? Not particularly because he was bad, but just because of the Cambridge game. So sitting on the bench is no problem. Prince Andrew apparently is on board, which is quite interesting. Lock up your daughters. Carl Beach, morning, mate. Andrew Robinson, shit result, no leadership on and off the pitch. That's not right, Andrew. That's really not right, mate, at all. Or in my opinion, that's not right. I think we do have leadership. I think it was interesting that Mark Kennedy said that actually they used last night's game, and in the warm-up, Mike Garrity didn't say anything in the warm-up to test the character of some of the players that were out there. And he said there were too many that were quiet. And I was chatting then to, again, Chris, who manages rugby Sunday League level, and he said at training sometimes he shuts up for 30 minutes to see who talks, who are the leaders, find stuff out about your team. So I think, Andrew, to be that kind of cut in at this stage, in my opinion, it's all opinion, But I don't think that that's accurate. Carl says, I've never been to one of these games. Guess they feel like a friendly, which I never bother with either. Yeah, they do. They do. And like I say, for me, it was more about seeing one or two players than anything. Felice, I hope I pronounced that right, mate. Morning to you. That's Retford Imps. Craig, we've already seen. Matt Walker said a very disjointed performance. No fight. They seem to accept defeat. Love the fact MK calls it how it is. Again, I'm going to disagree with that because we were only losing in the last 5 minutes. So you're saying they showed no fight in the last 5 minutes when I think that was when Virtue had his shot over. I can't agree. I can't agree with that, unfortunately, either, mate. It was a disjointed performance, more so in the second half than the first half. That I absolutely agree with. But again, that no fight kind of comes across as lazy, as you know, it's not the same person, by the way, but it comes across as that kind of saying it's lazy, saying there's no leadership. It's this hyperbole around the negative performance. This sometimes isn't the case. It was an off night, but to say that we have no leadership on the pitch when we've just come through the 2 games that we've come through, where we've won 6-3, where we had to show fight because we weren't playing well at the back and we showed lots of improvement and lots of going forward. Derby, where it was fight completely, to then label last night's game with these kind of sensational statements, in my opinion, is doing the team a disservice. I respect people's rights to an opinion, but I think sometimes rather than looking at a single game, you have to stand back and look at the bigger picture. And the worry for me is not no fight, because I think that we have it. It's not a lack of leadership, because I think we have it. It's a lack of character in the moments after a major incident in a match where we score and then we seem, whether we think the game's won or whether we retreat, and you can evidence that over a period of games. Forest Green, we showed fight against Forest Green, we drew 1-1. Fleetwood, where we crumbled towards the end, 2-0 up, drew 2-2. But then on the other side of it, you look at conceding against Oxford and not losing the game, having the goal disallowed against Derby and showing the fortitude to go on and fight and get the second goal, conceding against Bristol Rovers, immediately going up and scoring. You see, there are evidence to the contrary of this kind of negativity as well. So I think that's important to look at. Blake Hutchinson, good name, morning. Andrew Robertson says Davenport looks a good player. That, my friend, we can agree on. Sean Simon says the same. Davenport had a great game and put himself about. James Hoy, what did Hopper do last night? I have covered that. I thought that he was very, very quiet. Sean Simons, have I missed anything on Freddie Draper? I'm not sure, mate. Have you? I think he's still injured, isn't he? We don't hear an awful lot from him. I think he's had an injury. I would imagine when he's fit, that's the sort of game that he plays in. Molly Wall had really looked forward to seeing Davenport last night, impressed with his movement, and said to see him pick up a possible injury. Yeah, definitely if it's his hammy, which I think the Mark Kennedy said afterwards. And it was a low load game for him as well. So yeah, interesting. Ted Sanders and Davenport could be a good midfield 3 when all fit. For me at the minute, actually, it's probably Ted, Matty Virtue and Davenport, but we've only seen Davenport for 60 minutes. So it's harsh to say that. I also think Virtue could probably play the holding role. So you could have Virtue, Ted Bishop and Max or Tashan. Do you know what? People have already judged Tashan because of his first kind of couple of games where he was a bit in and out and he looked a bit weak and a bit lightweight. I've seen enough from him over the last 3 or 4 games to convince me that get another couple of months in him. Charlie, come on. Get another couple of months in him and get him up to match fitness and comfortable at League One level. I think we've got a hell of a player in Tashan as well. I really do. And I think sometimes you've got to look at that bigger picture. Richard Cross, when do you think NK will know his best 11, or will he mix and match depending on opponent? I think the second one, mate. I think if you have your best 11, you begin to fall into you can fall into the trap of seemingly having favourites. I think Michael Appleton thought he knew what his best 11 was, and it included Chris Maguire. And then he was seemed unwilling to go outside of that kind of idea. I think you have to be always open to changing your first 11. And Mark Kennedy's already done that. He had Jamie Robson in. Now I think Sean Rowan has got in. So I think you always have to keep an open mind. And I think your best 11 changes week to week anyway. It's easy to say this is our best 11 on paper, but then what setup are we playing? I think there will be some times where we go forward at the back with 2 holding midfielders, what I used to call double 6s, until I think Danny corrected me and told me there were 4s. And in that case, you then probably play, if Davenport is fit, you play him and Sorensen, or Virtue and Sorensen, and that changes then who plays at the top of the kind of the midfield triangle. So I think that there's, when it comes to strongest starting 11, changes week by week, month by month. James Hoy, 15 league goals since signing for us, I think, and less assists. What's the point? Well, you say I think. So I'm not going to start arguing about Tom Hopper, because haters going to hate. People who don't like Tom will not see any positive in what he does. I'm not disrespecting anybody at all. Opinion is opinion. I'm not convinced he's a top 10 League One striker. When we lost him last season, it was very, very clear what he did from certain points of view. In the Michael Appleton setup, I think that he was an important player. I think in the way that Danny Cowley played, he would be the perfect centre forward. And that's why John Akindi always used to get stick as well, because he played a lot like Tom Hopper would. And I think, Tom's probably had more goals per games from open play for us than John Akindi did. So he's that type of forward. I'm not so sure in the way that Mark wants to play that all of Tom's attributes fit the style. But if we are going to be going a little bit longer, it's not always fair to blame Tom when a ball comes into him, he looks to flick it on or head it on and it goes nowhere. The wingers have got to tuck in, or the attacking midfielders have got to come up and pick up the bits and pieces when we go a little bit longer to him. And let's not forget, he was injured for the last game. He's only just come back in. He is an easy person to criticise, but when we missed him, it's been evident. I don't think we've seen a fully fit Tom Hopper all last season. Well, no, we haven't, because I chatted to him about it. So I think last season was a real write-off for him. I thought he was very good for us in the season that we went to the playoff. I thought before that, he'd only played a handful of games before that as well. So I think that he is a good League One striker. I think the problem is when you don't have a backup for him at the moment. We do, Ben House, but I'm not going to argue the point with anybody about Tom Hopper, because if you don't like him, you don't like him, and that's I'm not going to be able to change your mind, sadly. Craig Harvey, Regan doesn't look as comfortable at centre half this season. I disagree with that, mate, as well, to be honest. Adam Barlow very poor last night. That I can agree with, certainly in the second half. Glennis Wilcox liked 10K's response last night. He obviously disappointed with the last two results. Players seem a bit complacent. They can't do that when only 1-0 up. I don't think he's disappointed with the result on Saturday. We won 6-3. I think he was disappointed with aspects of the performance, dare I say. Carl says it's good to mix up the starting 11, keep players on their toes and give others the chance to impress, and competition for place is also good fitness. I agree. Hang on 1 second. Charlie, wait. Hang on, people. I've just got to put him on a lead run across the road. This is great listening, by the way, if you're listening on the podcast, isn't it? Fantastic. And those that see can see the dog. There he is. So I think Tom is very unselfish in a lot of games and puts the team first. Too much so. Which was the game where there was a foul on the edge of the area, and he then crossed it rather than shooting, and we could have won the game and didn't. Might have been Forest Green. Yeah, too much. Julian Soons, hope you're well, mate. Understand your viewpoint and leadership. You feel leadership is more effective from the back line or central position from a more vocal player than either a forward or a goalkeeper. More effective leadership can be seen when Hopper's been dropped. And leadership comes from a more vocal player, Regan. And no Scott Kerr really divided opinion, but he did rally the troops from centrally like Liam Bridcut and Paul Morgan. I take the point on board. 1 moment. I take the point on board about leadership and from the centre. I think that it's easy to get hung up on positions. I think when you look at Tom, there's not very many passages of play where he's further than 30 yards from it. I don't get hung up on the captain being somebody who needs to, is the only one that leads for a start. Because Tom's captain, it doesn't mean that Regan can't talk. Because Tom's captain, it doesn't mean that the midfielders can't be vocal. I'm not so sure on that. I don't think a goalkeeper should be captain, is my personal opinion. I think any outfield player is fine. I really do, because you would say for at least 70% of the game, if you imagine that 30-something% is played in each of the thirds, then your captain, if he's a striker, is going to be involved in at least 60% of that kind of play, if you see what I mean, more so than the defender. If your defender if your centre half's the captain and he doesn't go up for corners, are we saying that there's no leadership when there's a corner, an attacking corner? Do you see what I mean? You know, a defender spends as much time in his area of the pitch as a centre forward does in his area of the pitch. So by that rationale, you would only ever have a central midfielder as a captain, and I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. I don't think that the leadership on the field just comes from the captain, and I don't think that being captain means you're the only one that should be vocal. Carl Beach says Hopper is an important player, not prolific goal rise, but we need that vocal target man up front to hold it up and bring others into play. Yeah, I mean, again, I see that from Tom. He didn't do it last night. I'm buying. Yeah, I'll buy that. He wasn't on it last night, but he hasn't had a bad start to the season, and I think it's easy. Again, it's like Tashan. Like he plays 3 or 4 bad games or 2 or 3 bad games at the end of the season. Then when he's good, people still have those poor games in mind, and it's the same with Tom. Last season didn't play well, started well this season, but it's easy suddenly to forget how well he started this season with the opening goal, with the goal at Exeter and the goal I think at Oxford, and the fact he put himself. Yeah, it's easy. It's easy. Craig says, I'm more positive though, mate. One more clean sheet for matching the whole of last season. Clean sheet, surely progression took us till October. Yeah, we were defensively very, very poor last night. James Otter, interesting point. I disagree. The goalkeeper can see everything at all times. It's a good point. Really good point. And it kind of goes in hand with what I'm saying and makes me look a hypocrite, because I'm saying that you've got to be like Tom doesn't have to be involved at both ends of the pitch to be captain, and then I'm saying that a goalkeeper who's not involved at both ends of the pitch shouldn't be captain, whereas in actual fact, like you say, goalkeeper sees everything at all times. One thing I'll say is it's easier to see what's going on from the stands than it is pitch side. I went pitch side briefly last night to go get chips at a football game, cracking. So I went to go get chips. Diet went out the window. Went pitch side, and you can't really see what's going on properly. And it's interesting then that managers and coaches don't. You know, I know they need to be down on the touchline. If it was me, I'd actually have one of my assistants or coaches up in the stand, mic'd up, watching the game and be able to see a little bit better and positioning and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, James Otter, it's a good point, James. Thank you, mate. I appreciate that. Right, I'm home. The dog is done. I am hoping that our chat has been enlightening this morning. Thank you everybody for watching. There will be a podcast out this week. I'm not sure quite who's doing it just yet, but it will be one of the 4 of us. In the meantime, I will get a write-up done on today's game. I'm just really busy, but I'll get one done towards the end of the day with some of Bubs' photos. Yeah, so stay positive. Have a nice Wednesday. Up the Imps.